G'day everyone, and welcome to the second video in week 3 of LA 3006 Administrative Law. In this video, we're going to look at the difference between merits review and legal review. This is one of those concepts that's honestly not all that complicated, and yet for some reason, it can be really hard to wrap your head around. And as we'll see, it really matters in terms of which venue you can sue in and what remedies you can get. And it all stems from our old friend, the doctrine of the separation of powers. In order to make this surprisingly tricky topic less complicated, I want to explain it with an example that has absolutely nothing to do with the law, and then we'll bring it back to the law. I want you to imagine for a moment that you're a well-known local restaurant blogger, and you get contacted by 3 local Italian restaurants. They're keen to get some publicity with your audience. They want to pay you $1,000 to promote a competition between them. You're the judge, and for your money, you need to write reviews of each of them and choose the best. Now, they have some rules. First, you have to go as part of a couple, booking in a false name, so they won't be able to prepare for you. Second, between the pair of you, you have to order garlic bread, at least 1 entree, and at least 2 non-pizza main courses. You then have to order coffee, and it has to be the same coffee order at each restaurant. Finally, you have to book your table for 7 p.m. on a Thursday night at each restaurant so you can judge the service fairly. The first restaurant is Benita's House of Pasta. You and your partner book in at 7 p.m, order the garlic bread and some stuffed olives, then some carbonara and marinara before you both order mochas to end the evening. It's all pretty good. The service is quick and attentive. You're impressed. Second, the following Thursday night, you go to Soprano's. Again, you book at 7 p.m, you have garlic bread and an antipasto platter, then some creamy mushroom pasta and a bolognese before you have your mocha. Again, it's all very good. Nothing to complain about. Somehow not quite as good as Benita's was. Finally, on the last Thursday night, you head over to Giovanni's kitchen. Work finished a bit late that afternoon, so you book at 7:30. You're also feeling a bit over full, so you order the garlic bread but skip the entree, and you share a bowl of pesto linguine. You're a bit over mochas by now, so you have a cappuccino instead. A few days later, your big blog post goes up. Even though you gave all 3 restaurants a solid thumbs up, you announce Benita's as the winner of the competition. That night, though, your email inbox blows up. First, there was an email from Big Tony at Soprano's. He's not a happy man. He writes, "You don't seem to appreciate the quality of home-cooked pasta sauce. I can't believe you didn't realise that those chumps over at Benita's just pour their sauces out of jars. For someone who's supposed to be an expert, you have made a very, very bad call. Never come into our restaurant ever again, or you will be sleeping with the fishes." The second email was from Giovanni himself. "You have not treated us fairly at all. I've asked around. You did not follow your own rules. You booked the table with us at 7:30 p.m. We did not get to serve you an entree, and you only tried 1 of our pastas. Then you compared our cappuccino with their mochas. Now we are losing bookings to Benita's. Never come back into our restaurant ever." Now clearly, Big Tony from Soprano's and Giovanni, they're both pretty unhappy. But can you see that the nature of their complaints is actually completely different? Big Tony accepts that you followed all the rules. You did everything you were supposed to do. But in his mind, you made a bad decision. Giovanni, on the other hand, is upset because you didn't follow the rules. You didn't give him a fair go because there were processes you were supposed to follow and you didn't do that. Big Tony is therefore saying that you followed the rules, but you made a bad decision about the merits of the restaurant. Giovanni doesn't mention the merits at all. He's upset that you didn't follow the rules. This is the distinction between law and merits. Legal review asks, were all of the rules followed when this decision was made? Merits review asks, was the decision any good? Now let's consider a real life case. This case is called Clissold and Perry. It's an old case, 1904. We've already met it. Mr. Clissold occupied land near Sydney. The government wanted that land to build a school. The government also didn't want to compensate Mr. Clissold because they said there were problems with his title to the land in the first place. Can you see there are two potential ways to argue this? On the one hand, Mr. Clissold could have argued that this was a stupid place for a new school. Too close to a major road, not enough kids in the area, whatever. That would have been challenging the merits of the decision. It would be saying that the decision itself was a bad call. Instead, though, he argued that there are rules about when the government can take someone's land, and that those rules required compensation. So he didn't have to care about whether it was a good place for a school or not. He argued that regardless, the rules had not been followed. This was legal review, and he won too. So you can see merits review asks, was the decision any good? Legal review asks, were the rules for making this sort of decision followed? So why does this matter? For most of this course, we're going to be looking at the review of administrative decisions by a court. The Administrative Decisions Judicial Review Act 1977 says it right there in the title. It's about judicial review, court review. Now, courts, of course, exercise judicial power. They determine disputes about the law. So if we go to a court and say this government decision maker has failed to follow the law, well, then the court is very happy to determine that. It'll look at the law and apply it to the situation. Now let's consider what would happen if we went to the court seeking merits review. A decision has been made by an administrative decision maker using executive power. We don't like that decision, so we challenge it in the courts. Can you see that if the court judged that decision, if the court changed or overturned that decision, the court would actually be acting exactly as though it was an administrative decision maker. In other words, the court would be using executive power rather than judicial power. The court would be acting like a public servant. This offends the separation of powers. So a court will only undertake legal review. A court will only say if a decision has been lawfully made. It will never say whether the decision is any good. Honestly, though, you've run into this idea in your law studies before. Think about two people who bring a contract dispute before the court. The court's not interested in whether it's a good or sensible or worthwhile contract. The court's not interested in the merits of the contract at all. The court's only interested in the legal meaning of the contract. Well, it's pretty much the same in contract law. As you move through the coming weeks and tackle administrative law, you need to keep reminding yourself over and over that we're almost always interested in legal review. We're not asking whether the decision was any good. We're asking whether it was made in accordance with all the relevant rules. Don't worry, I'll keep reminding you along the way. And if you find this stuff confusing later, you can always come back and review this video. For now, just try to sear into your brain that legal review asks if the right process has been followed, and merits review asks if the decision was any good. I promised this video would be shorter, and this wraps us up for week 3. Next week, we're going to start looking at some of the actual errors by looking at what we call the jurisdictional errors of law. See you then.